It's 2 p.m. on a Sunday here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Conn-young. It's been 100 hours or more than 4 days since a nearly 7,000-ton Sewol-ho ferry sank into waters with more than 470 people on board. Now, roughly 52 have been confirmed dead so far. However, we have conflicting numbers. More than 250 remain unaccounted for. Search and rescue operations have continued for the last 4 days, but with little results as no survivors have been found since. Rescue teams retrieved more bodies from inside the hull overnight and early this Sunday morning. Unfortunately, it looks like we can expect the death toll to increase even more in the coming hours and days. Let's go live to our correspondent down at Pyeongmookgung Harbor, the focal point of the search and rescue operations. Leah, no news of survivors, but more bodies have been retrieved, right?
Hi, Conn-young. The death toll here has been rising at a rapid pace. It was at about 11:50 a.m. local time that a male body has been found. He is believed to be around in his early 20s, but we don't have any more details on that. And also, ever since then, 2 more bodies have been found, raising the death toll to 52. Now, the DNA samples are being taken from the bodies here at the harbor, and the bodies after that are being transferred to the hospitals here. And also, I also have some tragic news. A Navy sailor who has been taking part in the rescue operations have died yesterday. He was taking part in the rescue operations on Wednesday, where he hit his head. He fell into a coma and he was transferred to the hospital, and he was there since then, but he has unfortunately died yesterday. Conn-young?
Well, just a tragedy on top of more tragedy. You know, we continue to hold out hope that more survivors will be found. How are the rescue operations proceeding? They seem to have picked up pace.
Well, Conn-young, 5 guidelines have been attached to the vessel. Now, the divers will be using those guidelines to get into the vessel promptly and also simultaneously. The emergency headquarters here has announced that over 560 divers, along with 204 vessels and 34 aircrafts, will be dispatched to the site of the accident today to help out for the rescue operations here. Now, the weather is looking pretty clear down here, really helping out the rescue operations. Tides are going at about just 1 meter, and conditions is truly improving here for the rescue team. Conn-young?
Well, we are holding out for hope for some good news now, which has been so hard to come by in recent days here in Korea. That was our UDN reporting live from Pyeongmookgung Harbor near the ferry disaster site. Now, in the past 24 hours, the death toll has increased drastically. And as the search and rescue operations continue, it looks like the death toll will soon rise sharply in the hours and days to come. There is even a word now that the Korean government is considering designating the ferry sinking site in another area as special disaster zones. Now, for more on this and other updates, we have our Connie Lee standing by in the news center. Connie, what are the updates?
Hey, Conn-young, so that decision by the Korean government could come as early as this afternoon. Prime Minister Chung Hong-won had planned to meet with the related ministers today on this issue. The potential disaster zones are Chindo Island and Ansan. Chindo Island has the closest port to the area where the ferry sank. And the city of Ansan is where Tanwon High School is located, or where most of the passengers were from. If Chindo and Ansan become special disaster zones, then the government could provide aid to those areas and give financial assistance to the victims of the sunken ferry. Now, this includes relatives of those still missing. Conn-young.
Yes, Connie, that could be likely since there are reports of people in both of those areas suffering this from physical and psychological effects, and I could only imagine. Now, Connie, the number of bodies found is increasing by the hour. It seems as divers get further into this ship, right? And what can you tell us about the current rescue efforts?
Right, it was just today that divers seem to be making progress getting inside the ship by breaking through the windows now. Most of the bodies so far, according to the officials, were found on the 3rd and 4th floors, or where the cabins are located. And what we do know now is that the rescue teams are attempting to reach inside other areas of the ship, like the cafeteria or places where a lot of passengers were expected to be at the moment of the incident. Now, that's all I have for you right now from this news center. I'll be back in the later newscast with more updates.
Right, that was our Connie Lee, and she will join us once again in our later in our newscast. Now, rescue teams on the scene had hoped to use underwater vehicles to help locate victims of the Sewol-ho disaster, but strong tidal currents and limited visibility have made that very difficult. Our Park Ji-won tells us more about some of the devices divers could use to assist their efforts.
This is remotely operated underwater vehicle called the HANKOOK, developed by the Korea Institute of Ocean Science and Technology. This unmanned vehicle can dive up to 6,000 meters to the bottom in the sea and move at a speed of about 2.8 kilometers per hour. This multifunctional deep submergence vehicle is equipped with robotic arms, a diverse set of measuring instruments, and an underwater camera. Some question whether this state-of-the-art unmanned underwater vehicle can provide any help in the ongoing rescue operations of the Sewol-ho ferry. However, experts say the vehicle was developed for the purpose of deep-sea exploration, where currents are not very strong.
The tidal current speeds near the Seoul accident site are about 8 kilometers per hour. The propulsion of the underwater vehicle needs to be at least twice that.
Another piece of equipment that could help is this so-called diving bell, which provides an air pocket where divers can breathe. Deployed near divers, it can lengthen the amount of time they can stay underwater.
Divers now have to wait for the currents to stop because strong tidal currents have been hampering their operations. This can be a shelter for divers, and divers can continue dives for 20 hours.
The establishment of systemic technology support by revamping remotely controlled submergence vehicles and innovative diving technology is ever the more urgent to save lives during maritime disasters. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
While the rescue process in Chindo Island is as busy as ever, so are the hospitals in that area, and one of the hospitals is the MOKPO HANKOOK Hospital, where Arirang's Lee Seung-jae is standing by. Seung-jae, tell us what the latest is at the hospital.
Now, Conn-young, all the reporters here at the hospital were briefed by some of the head members of the hospital, and we were all told that about 10 bodies that were recovered early on the day would arrive at the hospital. Now, of course, we've been waiting for several hours now, and yet we have yet to see any of the bodies arrive just yet. But from what I understand, there are some funeral services that are going on at this moment for those bodies that arrived a day ago or a couple of days ago. But now in other cases, other hospitals like the Chungang Hospital, some of the bodies that did arrive where the doctors have been identifying the bodies. And for those that have been identified, they have been transferred, one of whom a student at Tanwon High School.
Now, Seung-jae, I understand some of the heads of the psychiatric center had a briefing at around 1 p.m. today.
That's right. At around 1:30 p.m. at the hospital, some of the doctors or professors at University Psychiatric Center did come through for some questionings. And they did state that all the survivors currently are going through some kind of PTSD right now. And they did say that around half of those survivors are currently taking medications, which is signs that the PTSD is at a very high risk at this point. Now, there are some who are suffering from amnesia as well and depression. And it is getting to a very serious case with the survivors right now. We can hope for the survivors to get better and hope for the best of luck for all these survivors out there. Meanwhile, that is all the updates I have for now at the MOKPO HANKOOK Hospital. I will be back with more. Back to you, Conn-young.
Well, our hopes and thoughts and prayers are with them all. Thank you, Seung-jae. We will check back with you again. That was our Lee Seung-jae reporting live from MOKPO HANKOOK Hospital. Now, many of these families of the missing have been camping out in the Chindo Indoor Auditorium nearby the accident site since Wednesday. Let's now go live to our Kwon So-ah, who has been with them for the last couple of days. So, what's the situation there like?
Conn-young, Prime Minister Chung Hong-won was said to have arrived here at the Chindo Indoor Auditorium around an hour ago to speak with the families of the missing people. However, he has not arrived yet here inside the gymnasium, so I will update you on further news in our later newscast. Meanwhile, earlier, by around midnight, families, when they heard about 3 new recovered bodies, they expressed their frustration against the government, and they also at times said had shouted that they want to go to Cheongwade and to express their grievance, but they were held back by police from leaving. Now, back to you, Conn-young.
Well, behind you, so it looks like there is some activity going on, perhaps Prime Minister arriving at the auditorium or not, and we will check back with you on that and get confirmation from you. But for the families there for now, it's been an unbearably long wait for these distraught families. How are they holding up?
Right, Conn-young. The families have been going through tons of emotions. Now, they're so exhausted, it seems that they now can't even shed tears. Now, many of them are just blankly staring at two television screens, one showing the news and one showing rescue operations, as well as descriptions of the recovered bodies, including their gender, height, clothing, shoes, and other features which are being provided to them as well. Now, news of the rising death toll has led to more crying and to some passing out, and I saw some being rushed out on stretchers. Now, medical personnel are on 24-hour standby here in what is a very tense and agonizing environment. Conn-young?
Yes, and understandably so. Thank you, Soa, for that. And we will check back in with you in our later newscast for the arrival of Prime Minister Chung Eung-won and what he has to say to those distraught families. That was our Kwon So-wa live from the Jindo Indoor Auditorium, where families have been waiting for their loved ones to return for 5 days now. The search is now in its 5th day, and hope is diminishing by the minute that survivors will be found. Medical staff there have begun collecting DNA samples from the families of the missing to help identify the deceased. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Officials have set up a tent to collect DNA beside the auditorium where many families of the missing passengers have been spending sleepless nights. While rescue divers are putting in great efforts to search for survivors and recover bodies, the time that has passed and the harsh conditions at sea have made it difficult to identify the bodies. With heavy hearts, families of the missing passengers have begun submitting their DNA to speed up the process of identification. Almost 90% of relatives of the missing have registered their DNA. Although they are still clinging on to hope their loved ones are still alive, some are preparing for the worst.
My wife still wants to believe our child will come back alive, but looking at the situation now, I just hope our child's body comes back soundly at least.
With unfavorable weather and harsh conditions at sea hampering rescue efforts, the physical and mental health of the families are also deteriorating by the minute. And with no end to the wait, the agony only deepens as time ticks by.
I took care of my niece for 11 years. I'm so upset. I told her to have a safe trip and she said yes. Since then, I've heard nothing.
Navy officials say the DNA samples will be analyzed as soon as possible. The DNA samples will be sent to the National Forensic Center to see if they match with the victims. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now, wherever the results lead, the despair has been palpable at the site where grieving family members of the capsized ferry's passengers have been gathering. For some, the sadness is mixed with anger and desperation abounds. And not only that, the focus has been on searching and rescuing the survivors of that ship. However, the survivors from that ferry capsize has also been suffering from mental disorders or discomfort, and we are worried about that as well. Now, for a deeper analysis, we are joined live on the line by Dr. Conn-young. She is a medical doctor at Samsung Medical Center. Dr. Tan, thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right, let's talk about the health of the survivors. We had a tragic news the other day, yesterday, that the vice principal of the high school hung himself to death. Not only that, a lot of the survivors we hear are suffering from what's called PTSD. What is the situation and what can be done?
Well, the early symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder can be grouped into 3 categories. The patients may first relive or re-experience a traumatic event, and this can be in the form of bad dreams or intrusive thoughts. Secondly, they can have changes in their emotional reactions, including increased arousal, also trouble sleeping, irritability, feeling emotionally numb, or having overwhelming guilt or shame. And the third group of symptoms is avoidance. The person may avoid people, places, objects, or events that remind him of the traumatic situation. There can be physical symptoms as well, such as chest pain, heart rate can be increased, there can be nausea or dizziness. It's important that these symptoms are recognized by the friends and family around the victims and the survivors. Also, they should be offered psychological counseling and treatment as well. If it's not addressed, PTS, so post-traumatic stress, can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, which is diagnosed after 1 month of debilitating symptoms. And this can become very serious if it's accompanied by severe depression or thoughts of suicide.
Right. So I think what you're saying is that post-traumatic stress is actually is a normal process that a human being goes through if one were to go through such a traumatic experience. But if that were to extend for more than a month, that could be diagnosed as a syndrome or disorder. Am I correct?
Exactly. So it needs to be present for more than a month, and it has to be debilitating, such as the patient is no longer able to carry out their normal function.
Right. Let's also talk about the families. The focus has largely been on finding the survivors. However, these family members of the hundreds of those missing have been camping out at this auditorium down in Chindo, and their physical as well as mental health or psychological health has come into question. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they must be going through a horrific time, and my heart goes out to them. There is a series of predictable behaviors, though, in people who are going through the grieving process. At first, there will be disbelief and perhaps an inability to accept this horrific reality. I think we just heard about the DNA testing, and one of the mothers, she just did not want to accept the possibility that her child has perhaps passed away. Then there may be anger, depression, and finally, after some time, there can be acceptance. What needs to be done, obviously, is friends, family, coworkers, people in their faith network. They all need to be supportive and help the families deal with this devastating loss. If the stress is too much, then the families should receive counseling themselves. There are treatments available. It's also important that they are offered an opportunity to express their emotions, not keep it in. Maybe join a support group or meet a counselor on a one-on-one basis.
All right. Well, definitely we need to grieve together as a nation with them and give them all the support that we can give to these victims, the families and the survivors of this tragic incident. Dr. Conn-young, a medical doctor at Samsung Medical Center, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
We now turn to our Connie Kim. She is standing by at Korea University Ansan Hospital, where the most number of the high school students injured in this accident are being treated. Now, some of the deceased have also been received there. Connie, what is the atmosphere there like?
Hi, Conn-young. I'm connecting to you live from Korea University Ansan Hospital, where a total of 6 of the deceased lie here. Now, I can't tell you for sure when they'll be released, but earlier in the day, 6 other bodies in this region have undergone the same process. Now, and I must tell you, the atmosphere in Ansan City was absolutely devastating, with cries and sorrow filling the city. Now, today is the first time this has happened. 4 of those were from Tanon High School, where more than 320 students from that school were on board the ill-fated ferry. Now, going into the 5th day inside the funeral hall isn't looking too well, as I saw some friends of the deceased crying out loud, saying they feel bad for not contacting them so often. Now, following news that an additional 13 bodies have been found in the waters of Chindo Island, we're not sure whether they will be transported here, but we'll keep you updated throughout the day.
Right, Connie, I heard there was a press briefing held by the Gyeonggi Provincial Office of Education. Give us the details.
Well, yes, there was a press briefing held at Ansan Olympic Museum earlier this morning, hosted by the Education Office, and they confirmed that a total of 23 Danon High School students, along with 4 teachers, are confirmed dead. Now, 19 of them lie here in the Ansan region, where the school is located, with 4 still at the local hospitals in Jindo Island. Now, a joint investigation headquarters office has been set up in cooperation with Ansan City, headed by Gyeonggi Governor Kim Moon-soo, for the sake of cooperation. Now, the task force team has deployed helicopters, personnel, ambulances, and equipment to speed up the remaining rescue operations off Jindo Island. Now, it plans to set up an emergency task force team in the island to take care of families who are waiting in agony for their loved ones to return. Now, I'll be back with more updates throughout the day. Conn-young.
All right, thanks, Connie, for that. That was our Connie Kim reporting live from Korea University Ansan Hospital. Now, Ansan is a region suburb of Seoul, where this one high school that had more than 300 passengers on board this capsized ferry had, and that high school, Danon High School, is in the Ansan region. And our Connie Kim reporting live from a hospital in that area.
우리도 너희를 포기하지 않을 테니까 너희도 절대 포기하지 마.
The nation is united to share, if not all, the grief of the families who are desperate for more information about their missing loved ones. Some 5,000 volunteers from more than 240 private and religious groups are at the site with the family members, offering necessities and encouragement. Our Kim Ji-yeon has this story.
As days pass by, families who long for their loved ones are growing wary. In times of crisis like these, a warm meal and a helping hand are a great help. Volunteers from various relief organizations came to Jindo Island, where the sunken ferry is located and where family members are gathered to find more about their missing family members.
A lot of families came rushing to site when they heard about the ferry incident. So we're trying to provide necessities while they wait to hear news of their loved ones.
The health of the families is deteriorating as time goes by, as rescue operations are further being delayed. Medicine and medical supplies are running short.
We'll provide medicine and medical supplies until the crisis recedes. We're planning to have a fundraiser so that we can keep renewing the supplies.
The nation is being united in times of crisis. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
Now, we are just getting reports that the death toll has now risen to 56. We have been getting conflicting reports on that figure, so we will give you a confirmation in our later newscast. But let's now go over to our Connie Lee. As divers continue their search efforts, there's also an investigation underway probing into what exactly happened with the ferry before it capsized. So, Connie, bring us up to speed on the investigations and the death toll as well.
Well, Conn-young, you mentioned that the number is at 56, and I can tell you right now that it has been confirmed, 56 confirmed dead. Officials say they found 2 more bodies. Now, as we continue with the rescue efforts, there's an additional 3 crew members who are currently, in addition to the 3 crew members who are currently behind bars. Authorities say they are now questioning about 10 other members. This comes as new details are emerging about the 3rd mate, the 25-year-old with the surname Park. Now, she was navigating the ferry, not necessarily steering the ferry. Now, officials say that she was navigating the ferry in challenging waters for the first time before the ship sank. Now, prosecutors say the 25-year-old had never navigated through the waters where the ferry crashed, and that she only had 6 months of experience. Officials say those waters with a lot of islands clustered together and fast currents are not an easy area to navigate a ship. Investigators are also looking into the sharp turn the ferry took, which prompted the vessel to start listing. Now, as we found out yesterday, the 3rd mate, along with another crewman and the captain, have been arrested. The captain, Lee Jun-seok, is charged with 5 violations, and if convicted, he could face life in prison. Conn-young.
Right. Well, the investigators have a lot to look at with this ferry disaster, and those involved will face some serious consequences. Now, I thank you for that update, Connie. With search and rescue efforts ongoing off Korea's southwestern coast, we have been paying close attention to the weather conditions down there. Let's get a check with our Michelle Park for details. Michelle.
Well, the weather has finally taken a turn for the better now. It's currently cloudy in Chindo with the tides coming in at heights of 2.6 meters, but they will diminish even more throughout the day. Now, also the fog has cleared up. With the visibility currently up to 13 kilometers, which is making it easier for the rescue to maneuver the underwater. Now, the times of the slow tides came quite early today. One just passed a couple of hours ago, and one more is expected today at 5:55 p.m. local time, which will only last about an hour. Now, the current temperature of the Jindo water is at 11.6 degrees with winds blowing at 7 to 11 meters per second, which is considered calm, and waves at 0.5 to 1.5 meters will help them out the rescue efforts. Now, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park. Back to you, Conn-young.
Thanks, Michelle, for that. And that's all for me at this hour. Our special coverage on the nation's search and rescue efforts for survivors in Korea's ferry disaster continues right here on ARIRANG. Join me again at the top of the hour.